My name's Eli Delaney, and I have the honor of meeting some pretty cool people. These are the entrepreneurs, the artists, the creatives, the game changers that are making a positive impact in the people that they meet. And I'm a firm believer that the people that you meet can get you anywhere you want to go. And this show is my way of sharing them with you. It's my way of also helping you meet cool people. All right, welcome back to Meet Cool People. Eli here, and we are ready for another show with one of my favorite people to get to spend time with. Today's guest, Katarina Alshaier. She is the Brownie Queen, and proudly so, and she deserves every bit of that. She is based out of Miami with her company, Devour Sweets, the online brownie boutique that caters to every sweet tooth. With that said, Kat, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure, my friend. This is way overdue. Little bit of history, and I didn't even talk about this before, was that you and I actually recorded this interview 2 years ago. And I put the podcast on hold for various personal reasons. And I was listening to it. And of course, I'm listening to like a lot of the previous episodes because I had like 3 or 4 or 5, maybe 5 of them recorded. And, obviously, like, they just weren't the greatest. I was not in a great place of my life at that time. And I'm listening to it. It's like, obviously, none of it had anything to do with the guests. The guests were great. But I was like, yeah, no, we're going to redo this. So now we are back and we are re-recording this 2 years later. And I can say I'm actually glad that we did that because of the fact that you've come a long way since we recorded that interview by quite a bit. So very much so. So why don't we start off? Tell us a little bit more about how did Devour Sweets get started?
So it's interesting. I always say there's when I started it and then the rebirth, so to speak. But the original conversation, the idea happened within a matter of a 2-minute conversation. It was Thanksgiving, actually 2016. And it was Thanksgiving. I was at my best friend's aunt's house and I was having a conversation with his cousin. I don't remember ever having a long conversation with her prior to this. And she was asking me what I want to do. I think I was 2 years out of high school at that point, and a year out of high school, actually. And no, wait, 2016. Yeah, a year out of high school. And she asked me what I want to do. I said I wanted to own my own business. Mind you, my best friend's family is a family of entrepreneurs, completely opposite to mine. So she was very excited for me in wanting to start my own business. And she's like, great, what are you doing about that? I said, well, I sold brownies junior year. She's like, great, you still doing that? I said, no. She's like, why not? 2 weeks later, I tested the idea out on a family friend, and that was the first tray of brownies that I ever sold. But then those 2 years between 17 and 19, maybe 2018 too, a little bit, I started networking. And that's when the needle really started to move. By then I had all the flavors down and I knew how to bake because prior to this, I wasn't really in the kitchen that much. But the business itself, for somebody that wanted to be an entrepreneur, that was an entrepreneur, but just didn't want to have to rely on so many people's opinions to have to start, it was a very easy business to start. You bake them, you sell them, you use them to get indoors. You don't really need to rely on a whole lot of people because my first business was supposed to be a clothing line. And I still put that on the shelf because I never count anything out. But that never got off the ground because I listened to everybody else before I listened to myself. And I did not make that mistake with this business, and it served me all right so far.
That is awesome. Now you brought up the networking. So I want to go back and actually share the story because you've heard me say this story multiple times. So this is for everybody else listening in of how you and I met.
Yeah.
So it was November of 2018. So you were still fairly new in doing this at that point, which is pretty cool.
I'm
Uh,
pretty sure I was taking them
yeah.
dollar store trays and cling wrapping it.
That's a possibility. So here's,
Yeah.
I want everybody to listen to this and kind of imagine this. So I'm in Miami, November 2018, speaking at an event, and part of that event, we ended up actually going to another bigger networking event. It's called Epic Talks. And so I'm there meeting people, networking, all that kind of stuff. And there's food and, you know, finger food, there's trays, there's sandwiches. And then there's this table full of these little brownie bites. And of course, you got to get a sandwich and you get whatever you can. And you grab a couple of these things, check them out. And I literally took a bite of them. I was like, okay, these are amazing. And I turned back around. The entire or the entire table was gone, like all of it. I mean, it was like you would imagine we were in a pool of piranhas. That's how fast they went. Okay.
Yeah.
That was my first experience of meeting Kat before we actually met. I had no clue. I just knew these things were really tasty, and I was really bummed that they went so fast because I wanted to go grab another one. So the next day, I'm actually at the main event that I was there speaking at, and Kat shows up and she's got more brownies. Come to find out, she's the one that had those brownies. And so we ended up hitting it off. Of course, had to eat some more of the brownies. We ended up hitting it off, having a great time. And because over the next few months, for several months, actually almost most of 2019, I was doing trips back to Miami quite a bit. She and I actually got to become really good friends. And that's where this whole story began. And every time I went to Miami, one of the big things was to make sure I brought some extra containers so I could bring back brownies with me.
I always gotta leave a little extra space in the suitcase.
Always, always. So you brought up, and the reason I tell that story is because you brought up that your business started taking off when you started networking.
Mhm.
And we know networking is such a powerful tool, and you've got to get out there. You've got to meet people. And it's like as I always say, the people that you meet are going to get you anywhere you want to go. And the
Yep.
reality is that our friendship is a piece of that. And we're talking about, you and I met November 2016. We are now in May
2018.
or 18, excuse me, 2018. Yeah, not quite that long. November of 2018, and it is right now May of 2024, and you and
Yeah.
I are still very good friends, and we see each other all the time, virtually. Not as much in
Virtually.
person. It sucks. Just a little hint for everybody. I used to convince her to bring me mochas to the place because they didn't have a coffee shop close by. But you and I are still friends, and I have seen you explode your business. When we met, you were doing events and stuff like that, and now you're shipping all over the country, right?
hmm Yeah. So it's funny because up until 2020, without having to say it, I was doing events. That was the bulk of my business. I, would box up here and there, but the primary source of my business was events. And I kid you not, the last week of February of 2020, I had 3 events lined up for Music Week because Miami Music Week is a big week here in Miami. And within a week, everything was pulled out under the rug for me. And I was, off my axis, which is a good thing because that's happened a handful of times to me now, and you get used to rebalancing yourself. And I believe it was April of 2020, maybe May of 2020, that you started your virtual networking group. And because of that group, I started to ship more. Now, I don't know if it was people locked up, people bored at home, but I had friends wanting to buy brownies being locked up in the house. I had people wanting to buy brownies from out of state. For whatever reason, they remembered I had a business being locked up at home. And what ended up happening was I had an online business now. Mind you, I've always had an online business, but it was that year that events were canceled. We weren't going a whole lot of places that people still wanted brownies.
Mhm.
And in that, I started shipping across the country, 3 days flat, from Portland to Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And that was really cool because in that I had to learn logistics, I had to learn packing, I had to learn all that stuff, but you never learn it until you're thrown into the cauldron to figure it out.
Right.
And it's been awesome.
That is very cool. And it's fun because I got to see that. I was part of that. And the fact that I was one of the first ones like, okay, when are you going to get your store up? I'm ready to order some,
Yeah.
and I was honored that I could help be part of that and help give you that push from that standpoint. But one of the things I really want to talk about is you did such an amazing job of doing that pivot, because when 2020 happened, I was like, every year there's I call them an economic shift when those things happen. There's
Mm-hmm.
always a word that kind of gets associated with it. And 2020 was pivot because everything happened so fast. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't have time to think about it. We had to pivot fast and make a decision
Exactly.
really, really quick. And you did an amazing job of that. I know you had some encouragement from us, which is always great, but the reality is, what was it, what was in your head as you're going through that and figuring out, okay, what's the next step? What am I going to do now?
It's just, in one sweet sentence, it's just servicing the people, servicing the demands. And there's a reason why I can probably say we cater to every sweet tooth, because not only do we have 15 plus flavors for every season, but also because of your group and everybody, the variety of people in it, I make most of our menu regular, vegan, and gluten free. I did not do that prior to 2020. I didn't do that prior to people wanting brownies, but needing them gluten free. And now I can cater to the regular sweet tooths, the vegan sweet tooths, and the gluten free sweet tooths. And you can't really stop to think about it. You don't want to lose that demand. You want to make as many people happy
Mhm.
in the servicing sense. You're not going to always please everybody, which is perfectly fine. But how many sweet tooths can I really cater to? And you don't really stop to think about it because you want to just service the demands. And
Right.
that is what just came out of that time is okay, I can't do events right now, but people still want brownies by some miracle. So I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm gonna service however many people want brownies in this time. And it was a great learning experience. And yeah, there's support, but there's also demand. And you just have to not spend time thinking about it. It's just a matter of how you're gonna do it.
Right. Well, I think that's one of the things that I thought was so awesome with that was that as I saw you grow, you're like, okay, what's next? What are we going to do that's going to be innovative? And you made that innovation based on the community of people you were networking with, which
Mhm.
again goes back to your having conversations. I mean, this show is the Meet Cool People show. It's like, how do you meet cool people and have conversations with them to figure out how can you serve them best? And you did an amazing job of that, and by figuring out, okay, there are people in our group that were, needed gluten-free stuff. And next thing you know, boom, you've got them out there. I will share a fun little story for everybody because I know you always get a kick about this. When Kat started putting these together, she sent me a box and she was like, they might be gluten-free, they might be regular. I'm not going to tell you. And
Mind
you
you,
just have to figure it
to
out.
preface for everybody that I only do this with you because whether you like them or not, you're still gonna love me. So I just have to throw that in there.
And you were very true on that one. I got to be the guinea pig, and I was very happy to be the guinea pig on that one, by the way, because I got brownies out of it. And just in case anybody listening has any interest whatsoever, I love the red velvet ones; they're my favorite. But it was kind of cool to see that, and and the fun thing was that we gotta have a game out of it, which was kind of cool. But then on top of it, I can say from my personal experience, as somebody who normally, when I go to try something that's gluten free, most of it is not all that great, especially when it comes to like chocolates and brownies and cookies and things like that. And I couldn't tell the difference. She told me I wasn't going to be able to tell the difference. I knew that there was something slightly different because they were like half and half, weren't they? Isn't that what you said?
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
awesome.
So they were basically half and half. I could tell there was a taste of a difference, but I don't honestly know. And I'm saying this with full transparency. I don't know how much of it was me thinking that there was something different. So that's why I felt something different. But I can tell you enough that I couldn't determine which was which. Half of them were in the regular, half of them were gluten free, and I couldn't tell the difference between them. I could tell there was a difference between them, but I couldn't have told you which was which by any means. Which is major kudos to you for that, because I've tasted a lot of gluten free stuff, and a lot of it really is not that good. But the point of all of this, this is just a fun bit of the conversation, but the whole point of this is know your audience and listen to them and figure out how can you service them better and help them better. And, especially growing a business like what you have during a pandemic. I mean, yeah, you're selling comfort food. This is the kind of stuff that people want. So you had a great opportunity to totally explode that and take advantage of the situation to make other people's lives better, and you did. So I'm going to give you credit for that.
Thank you.
So as a entrepreneur, and this is one of my big reasons why I wanted to talk to you, not just to talk about brownies, which I told everybody that we're going to talk about the brownies. By the way, I'm just going to pitch them. Go buy the brownies. They're awesome. You can thank me later. And again, I will repeat, I like the red velvet ones. She's got my address on file. But here's the biggest thing is that you are the epitome of a perfect entrepreneur in my mind, because you are always looking at how you can innovate, how you can add value. You're always being creative. You're always putting yourself out there. What is it like from your mindset, your thought of, when you realize starting a business is not the same as being an entrepreneur, and you started a business that there is no doubt you were an entrepreneur at this point? What does that journey look like to you?
I think from my own perspective, I think there's just a handful of people that are purebred entrepreneurs where you don't really care what the business is. I think purebred entrepreneurs just think of the business as secondary, because your nature is always how to sell something. Your nature is always turning the mundane into a business. And I've done that my entire life. My family could tell you I've done that my entire life. My friends now, as they get to know me more and more, it's almost a joke of I can really make anything into a business. But that's always been my nature. And so my brownie business was just something that I can physically build, like I said before, without having to rely on third party voices and help, and just relying on my own self, trusting my own gut, which builds character. And like I said, for an entrepreneur, business is secondary, because my two biggest business idols, so to speak, number one is Richard Branson, and second is Gary Vee, and they don't have just one thing. Branson, I think, wakes up every morning probably thinking about what business to start next, and Gary's the same way. And it's just the nature of the human being, and the business is secondary. I'm just lucky that I've been able to use brownies to really build a professional life that will carry me really through other endeavors throughout the rest of my life. And for anybody that was doubting that brownies is such a simple, basic thing to put all my eggs into, I said, well, look at the last couple of years of my life. And brownies was the common denominator of why my life has been the whirlwind that it has been. So
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I notice about you, and you're very right. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that get into They get into business because they are there for the sales. Like, okay, how much money can I make doing this thing? The one thing, having that core coding in the back of your head, that's part of your DNA of, okay, this is what I can do as an entrepreneur. It's cool. But one of the things I found that makes a big difference, and especially in a lot of the entrepreneurs that I am in my community that I connect with and I resonate with the most, are that it's not it's not about making the sale. It's about providing a great service and making an impact to make somebody else's day better. And I think that's what sets you different, because you are that person. Yeah, you're going to have cool business ideas. You're going to do other stuff, and you're going to have a whole bunch of cool stuff down the future because you're still really, really young. But you are you really care about the experience. And I think that that is something that stands out. And I'd love for you to kind of share how that came. Like, I know, I was there as part of the fact that when you started going online, but then you started doing customized stuff for like corporate events and corporate gifts and things like that. You started creating that evolution of what's the next level and how can you service more people even better. How did that start coming into play?
I think from the inception of my business, I had this idea of what I wanted. I had this standard of what I wanted, but it took 3 years, 4 years to really craft it year after year into something better until I looked at my packaging one day. I'm like, this is what I wanted to start with. But I think this is a good lesson right here, is that a lot of people won't start because they want that gold box with the corporate branding. They want to start there, but they're too afraid to start with the dollar store tray and cling wrap and use that to get into the door to a corporate event. And so the corporate branding part was something I think I always wanted to do. I always had the standard of what I wanted my business to be, but it took 4 years to get there. It took the dollar store tray, then the brown box that you got to enjoy, to the rectangle boxes that were terrible in shipping. And but the brownies were good enough to still purchase, even if they did come a little mushed. But to now having a standard box that I started out reserving for this certain clientele, to say, no, this is what I want, the standard across the board. We're just going to change the content in the box to cater to the different clientele, but the standard of the box is going to be the same, regardless of if you're buying one flavor, a mixed flavor, custom boxes, what have you. Right. And so, yeah, that corporate branding, and it's cool because as my reputation builds, that is already a set product that when it further takes off, it's not something I have to figure out. It's already there, waiting to be bought, right? And so I think that's how that came about. That was the original vision, but I couldn't quite figure out how to get there, but I stumbled my way through. Right. So thankfully, by the time I got to, catering certain people's office openings, I was kind of prepared for that part.
All right. Can you say that publicly of that one? Are you allowed to?
I think I've posted it enough that it's okay. All right. Yeah. So by the time I catered Shark Tank's Daymond John's office opening right here in Miami, not probably too far from where you and I met. Mm-hmm. I was ready. I was still scared out of my mind. Right. And you can ask my friend that put me on. I was wiping plates for like an hour. But by the time I got to that point, I was, product-wise, I was ready. Confidence-wise, I know everybody thinks I'm full of confidence and I'm never scared, but I promise you, there's moments like that where I'm scared out of my mind, but I'm never going to get this opportunity again. That's what I usually tell myself. And then that opportunity ends up doubling itself. So it's never the only time I get to interact with those kind of people. But by the time I got to that point, to having that one moment of him introducing me to the office, saying fellow entrepreneur, that was probably more proud than any of the pictures,
Right.
because it takes one to know one.
Mm. That is
And
awesome.
it and it took 4 years, 5 years, what, I don't even care if it took 10 years to get me to that point. I was sitting in the sauna that night thinking about that entire day, that day that it happened. And I'm like, one, what the heck just happened that day? And two, everything that led up to that one moment. And I promise you that's not the last, I guarantee it.
Mhm.
But everything that I led up to that moment, all the cling wrap and the paper trays and the terrible cardboard boxes that were just disgusting, was worth it to get to that point.
Right. So I'm going to go back to something that you said a minute ago and recap kind of what you just explained to people in case they didn't totally understand the story fully. So you're just talking about, the event you got to cater, which was for Daymond John. And for
Yeah.
anybody who doesn't know who Daymond John is, you should know him. He's from Shark Tank. He had, is it Fobo or Fubo?
Fubu. Fubu. Yeah.
Clothing line.
Yeah.
Really famous dude, very cool dude. And you got to cater an event for him at his
Mhm.
office. Um, but I want to backtrack that to the important thing. So like that was cool. That's like the result. That's awesome that you got to do that. And I mean, being able to get to that point is phenomenal. But you said something really important that I want to reiterate, which was you might want to, you might have the dream of having, the gold trays, but you got to start with the dollar store. You
Yeah.
know, you were not, you weren't setting yourself to the standard of, I have to do this or it's not going to happen. You're like, I can start here. I know this isn't where I'm going to be down the road, but it's not beneath me to start here. And I think that is one of the things so many people miss the boat on is they don't understand you don't have to start with the best. You just got to start.
Yeah. Yeah. And consistency, not just in evolving your business, but also when it comes to networking, because people think the 4 years of relationships that I've built comes overnight. It comes within the first event or the first month of events. I can tell you the let me backtrack for you to really give you the timeline of how I got to that office opening. To how I got to that office opening. Sorry. Um Dessert Wars that I did? I originally didn't want to do Dessert Wars for a long time because I was scared. Because I didn't think I was ready enough for that. And one of my best friends kept encouraging me every year. So eventually I did sign up. And that ended up being my biggest event last year, which was like over 1,000 people. A videographer from that event saw me there. And I was tunnel vision that whole day. And I didn't pay attention to really anybody for more than 3 seconds. Fast forward a couple months later to when I was in a little bit of a bind in like October. I got a call out of the blue from somebody that had known me from Epic Talks for a couple years to cater his birthday party, 300 people. I catered that birthday party and I had my big 8 foot obnoxious banner for all of the Epic Talks crew to see. And that was one, a proud moment for me because they had never seen me with such legit branding before. But that same videographer that was at Dessert Wars was at that birthday party. And I said yes to both events on a whim, not really thinking much about the no. And that was October. We stayed in good touch. And then I can't remember if it was the end of December or maybe the second day of January. And he called me out of the blue that he had this connection. Do I want to cater the office opening? And once I unfroze my body, I said yes. I didn't care how many brownies Daymond wanted. I would have baked it in one night and had it for him the next day if he needed, but I at least had a week. But most people would not be as consistent going to events because they're not getting that end result of the office opening. And I built relationships out of consistency. I don't always, I'm not always on par with everybody in the room. Everybody's different level of people, different caliber of people. But just consistently seeing me there, I think earns me my badge of honor. It earns me that respect to people taking me seriously on the sixth time they see me, the seventh time they see me. Okay, that birthday party that I did, that guy's known me for 2 years. And now he calls me out of the blue on the same year that I did Dessert Wars. So now it's back to back to back. And then it goes from Dessert Wars to that 300-person birthday party to that office opening.
Yeah. Well,
that I woke up
that
at,
is consistency. The consistency is such a powerful thing, especially when it's networking and getting in front of people, because they have to see you. They have to know you're there. They have to know you're going to continue to be there, which, I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of people that are fly by night and they don't stick with it. And that's that stick with it is, I can't even say the word. I remember it's like a Jim Rohn or Zig used to say it. Stick to it withness, something or other. I can't even say it, but that was the way.
With it. Yeah, you're good.
Just how do you stick with it? How do you stay consistent? And that's where you earn the reputation, because you're always there. You're always in front of people, showing them what you got. And that
I don't like to miss out.
It's not even that complicated to do, but most people are just not willing to do it. And it's great.
It's not complicated. It's scared. And the other thing is, people think I'm not scared. People think I'm not awkward, but I'm the most comfortable. I'm the most awkward human being. When I walk into a room, I don't care if I own the room. I'm still awkward. Okay. And it's just not wanting to miss out. Right. And if I can leverage my brownies, because you need dessert at your event, right? And it's a dessert table at your event that you didn't have, and it just costs you a ticket, right? So I can be in the door. It's a win-win for everybody, because you get free desserts, I get to be in the door.
Right. Yeah.
And you keep doing that, and eventually, obviously, you get to a point where you can pay for your way in, but there's always a way. And don't let fear keep you, because I promise you, everybody in that room is scared. Everybody in that room is awkward and insecure just as much as you are, and nobody's willing to admit it.
Yeah,
that's what I have to remind myself.
Well, and that's one of the things so many people are, especially we talk a lot about introverts and extroverts, and I studied a lot of that forever ago because I love kind of studying human psychology in general. But on top of that, I am a hardcore introvert. Most people don't realize that until I actually talk about it. They think I'm an extrovert because I talk to so many people, and I am the guy. I'm like a poster child for what not to do for child safety, because I'll talk to anybody. But I am still an introvert. I walk into a room and I'm very strategic about where I stand and who I talk to and all that kind of stuff, because I don't want to be in the room. I'm uncomfortable talking to 50 different people or 100 different people. But if you learn how to do it, it's all learned skill. And I think you've done the same thing, and you've done a great job. And obviously that has paid off for you, because you get a chance to cater these events. You show up with your brownies. You get to hang out with some really amazing people. I mean, Daymond John is just one of them that I know you've gotten to hang out with, but I know others that you've met that there's a few that I've been very quite jealous of. I'd love to go hang out with, what was it? Jordan Belfort, when you met him, you know?
Well, that was an art battle. That had nothing to do with my brownies. That was just my luck.
Yeah, but you
That was
happened to be at the
awesome.
right place at the right time because you showed up. That's what I'm talking about.
I also did pay for the VIP, the upgraded Art
Mhm.
Basel gallery package. So sometimes that's another lesson. Sometimes upgrade because it pays off one way or another.
Yep.
But let me quickly touch on the fact that you said you're strategic about when you go to events. And I'm not exactly that way, except for the fact that I start with one person. Because I told you, when I walk into a room, I'm awkward. I'm going to talk to more people, but I have to warm up the engine first. So I always look for one person that I know, or I start with one person. Doesn't matter, even if it's a bartender. Just having a conversation while they make your drink, it warms you up. It's like, okay, I talked to one person. Then you make eye contact with somebody else. Then you go to another, and before you know it, you've worked the whole room. That's my strategy for events. Is I just start with one person, whether it's somebody I know, somebody that I randomly made eye contact with, or if it's a bartender. I'm friends with all the bartenders at events now. Because sometimes that's the first person I talk to.
Yep.
And then my awkwardness kind of goes away and you make conversation.
Yep, it does. Makes it a whole lot easier. Awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun, and I love being able to share this story because I've been able to watch your journey, and that is one of the coolest experiences in the world to see where somebody is when we first meet, and all the things you've done, all you've accomplished in these last couple of years, especially considering all the chaos that was going on in the world during all that. And it's an honor to call you a friend. I am so excited that we got to actually have this interview. As we're starting to wrap up, I got two final questions for you. So,
Okay.
second to the last question, you know me, Meet Cool People. This is the Meet Cool People show. What does Meet Cool People mean to you?
Life is boring if you're not meeting cool people. If you just meet one new person every day, multiply that throughout a year, that's what makes a very fun life.
Short, sweet, to the point. I like it. Awesome. Okay, so after all of this talk of brownies, I'm sure somebody's starting to get hungry. So, what is the
Hopefully.
best way for them to get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of us, I would say, either through Instagram or Facebook, just because you can message us directly through there. So our Instagram is Devour, Devour .sweets. And on Facebook, it's just Devour Sweets with
Awesome.
the big pink stamp logo. You'll see.
Yep. And definitely, connect with her on Instagram. She's always posting cool pictures, and it'll make you drool, trust me.
I hope so.
Awesome. Yeah. So Kat, thank you so much for coming and hanging out today. It is so good to get to see you, get to spend some time and talk about your story. And with that said, everybody else, get out there, have an amazing rest of the week. As always, if there's anything I can do to help you out, let me know. And that wraps up another Meet Cool People show. Now, if you like what you heard, be sure to give us a like, subscribe, or review so I can help introduce these amazing cool people to even more amazing cool people. And just remember, meeting cool people is just the beginning. You need to have a system in place to follow up with the amazing people that you meet. This is exactly what we do for our clients. If you'd like to see if my team and I can help you, go to followuprockstar.com and check out the case study video to see exactly how we're helping our clients turn casual connections into cash clients for life. Again, go to followuprockstar.com and we'll see how we can work together to turn you into a follow-up rockstar.